pattern update with it can be a little bit challenging because, again, this is not a sheet metal function. So I want to present a method today to have a model that you can change dimensions on when it's formed and have the blank or the flat pattern update as if it were sheet metal, even though SolidWorks wasn't made to go this advanced. To do this properly, you would need to have a paid add-in software such as BlankWorks, but if you've ever had the experience of going to the bean counters and trying to justify the expense associated with BlankWorks or anything else, you know that a lot of times they won't give you the software that you need. So this is presented as a workaround to still be able to flatten out, as you're seeing here, formed shapes. This is sort of a principle on how to do it, because I know you're probably not going to need to flatten out stars, but this principle should be able to be applicable to a wide variety of models. So let's get started. I'm going to open up a new part and let's get sketching on the front plane. And actually, before I sketch, I'm going to say Tools, let's go with Equations, and I'm going to create three. We're going to go with Height, and we'll make that 2. Let's go with Long, Length. We'll make that 1 for right now. The 1 is just going to be a placeholder. Short, Length, let's go with something like, you know what, I'm just going to say 2.83, and I'm going to say 6.32. Okay, so I've got some variables. You can make them whatever you want. Now I'm going to sketch on the front plane. And I'm going to sketch center line here and a shorter line here. Now we all know 5 points of a star is 72 degrees. So here I need to say 72 divided by 2. Okay, so now that we've got 36 degrees, I can finish filling some arbitrary dimensions out. Let's go with 6 inches here, 2 inches here. That looks good. Let's rebuild. And I'm going to choose a plane. This plane will work. I'm going to sketch and create one last center line. And here on Smart Dimension, I'm going to make this equal to my height. So in this case, 2 inches. Very good. So with this sketch, I am now able to create a 3D sketch. And all I have to do is connect the 3 points that I've created to make my star, or at least one part of my star. And from here I can say surfaces, and I have to rebuild to say not lofted surface, but rather filled surface. And now I've got a surface. And this is one that I can grab this plane, features, mirror, this surface, just like that. Now as I mirror this, notice I am using a body mirror. It won't work if I do a feature mirror, so bodies to mirror. And for now I'm not knitting my surface or merging my solids or forming solid or anything like that. I'm simply mirroring the body. Now I can say circular pattern, and in my direction I can choose this axis, and again I'm patterning bodies. And there we have our star. So one thing that I want to do now is track the length of this line and the length of this line, because those two are going to be vital when we lay it flat. And notice, when we lay it flat, we would probably expect this line length to not change very much. It'll just lay flat. So that will be very useful in tracking what our flat pattern dimensions should be. So I'm going to go to the 3D sketch and create some driven dimensions. I know that this length, this dimension driven, is going to be my long length, and this will be my short length. Hence, they correlate with the global variables that I've put in. So if I click on this dimension, I can rename this to something easier. I guess D1 at 3D Sketch 1 and D2 at 3D Sketch 1 are pretty simple to keep track of. So my equations, here I've got my placeholders. I can say equals, and in quotation marks, D1 at 3D Sketch 1. Here, again in parentheses, D2 at 3D Sketch 1. And there I have my height, long, and short lengths. Okay, now I know that I'm really not going to be available to fillet, or not fillet, but thicken rather, so I'm going to need some fillets. So I can lasso everything together and knit my surface on the Surfaces tab. I can lasso my surfaces, and I don't need to create solid. I just need to knit these together. So with these knitted together, I'm able to do fillets. I'm going to start with my inside fillets first, and if you notice, I can make these something like 0.3 or whatever dimension I want. And if I try to add two edges, it errors out. So I'm going to take the painstaking amount of time to add them in one by one. It's also important to note that the order in which you add fillets can often affect the way that your ending surface goes. However, I've looked through this and found that you get a really good ending surface despite adding fillets one by one in a different order. So I'm not too concerned about, say, the ending symmetry of this star as I add in a series of fillets. But when I add in fillets, this will help me generate kind of a smoother and flat pattern. So again, fillet, and that won't let me add a second fillet. And there we go. So when I take the tangent lines off, you can see I've got a pretty decent appearance. In Evaluate, I can run my zebra stripes, and you have a pretty nice ending surface here. Alright. Another question goes, well, I have to thicken this as well. And so let's make that thick. Let's say we want it 0.1 inches thick arbitrarily. And say surfaces, thicken the surface. We'll run the thickness on the other side, and 0.1 inches. Alright, so now we have a solid. Now I want to generate a flat pattern. If you notice on any sheet metal parts, the flat pattern is simply a configuration that is linked to the finished version. So that's easy enough to do. I can create my own configuration, and we'll call this something like star flat. Alright, that should be good. With this new configuration added, I can pretty much start from scratch. I'm going to choose sketch 1 and thicken. I guess I'll hold Control and Shift and suppress everything. Good. So everything's suppressed. Let's get on the front plane and let's create a sketch. This time I can just simply choose a straight up line and another line. And I can make these 36 degrees as normal. And now I know what length I need these when they're flat because I've got them into equation global variables. So I'll set a dimension equals to long length. I thought that would go at an angle and not be the vertical dimension. There we go. And short length. And now I can simply make this have a triangular line to complete it. I can rebuild, and under surfaces, we'll fill this surface up. There we go. And from here, on the Features tab, we'll mirror, and on this body, we'll mirror this. Circular pattern, again with bodies. And I can take my sketch here and show it, and that way, I guess I need to unsuppress it. And that way I have an axis to revolve around. So we'll go circular pattern. We'll choose this as a direction. And under bodies, we'll choose these. Alright, so we've got a flat pattern. There's a few things that we would want to step through still. If you notice, I can indeed switch to my formed configuration, and it moves in a way that it would be predictable when it's formed. And I can go to my equation-driven variables, and I can adjust this to something like 1 inch. And so now with an overall formed height of 1 inch, you can see I'm a lot more shallow here. So what can I do when I go and pick out my flat pattern? You can see my flat pattern may not completely update. That's because I need to reference the new dimensions off of that 3D sketch. So come over here, we'll choose surface fill. I don't need to have this feature unsuppressed, that would even mess things up, but I can unsuppress this sketch. Now, under equations, I can change this from 1 to 2 inches, and the flat pattern updates. You can see how it changes shape. So now, as this is the 2-inch flat pattern, it predictably will update when I show configuration here to be a much taller star. And it bends quite predictably. It's not perfect, but it comes pretty close to how SolidWorks would perceive the star to be. It comes pretty darn close as to what the blank should be. So now I can Go back to my equations, change this to 1. You can see it lays a little bit more flat, and when I show my configuration, the flat pattern updates accordingly as well. So it works just like sheet metal, but for a formed part. This again is a workaround, and hopefully you can take this principle to other models that you may have that are formed that you need to be able to flatten out and have a link between, so when you update one, the other one will update as well. I would also like to do a quick time lapse so you can see me render the thumbnail. If you're interested in learning how to render models like what you're about to see, please click on the link in the description, which is a link on how to use Blender to render SolidWorks parts. Hope this video was helpful. If it was, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.